All right. Hey guys. Natalie Harper here with Alair Homes, and we have Paul McGavigan joining us once again. This is our third part in our something to be named series.
Yeah, it's a series.
If you watched the last video, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it because then
Real cliffhanger.
you'll understand what we're talking about. But in the last episode of Paul and Natalie Talk Shop,
Onto the world.
we talked about hanging picture frames at home, and sometimes if you're not too careful and maybe you don't do it properly, you could end up with a hole that you need to repair or patch. So Paul, what happens now if someone did not heed your advice and now they have a hole to fix?
Mm-hmm. It's not only that. Like I said, you wait till your partner, significant other, whomever, a second opinion comes home before you actually hang that picture, because inevitably it's going to be in the wrong spot. I know this from experience. So it happens all the time. Maybe it's just even a chip. High traffic areas tend to chip the corners of drywall, that kind of thing, corner beads. But up to bigger things, maybe the kids ran into the wall, crunched some drywall in, whatever the case may be. From small repair to big around the house, there's a lot of different things that you can do. So if we start with the small things like that hole, maybe you've got too big of a hole, the plug pulled out, whatever the case is, you just want to repair that. So you can find a lot of different drywall compounds. Some are meant to be for very, very small repairs, things like Drydex. It comes in a little white container. I would have brought some with me, but I don't have any currently. But it goes on, when you apply it, it's pink. So, and when it dries, it goes white. So then you know that you've patched and where it's dry, and when you're ready for the next step. So things like Drydex is a great little handy thing that's already pre-mixed, kind of ready to go. But when you start moving up into bigger kind of drywall repairs, there's certain things that you want to do. Say you've got an area where the drywall has been kind of pushed in and it's crunched in, maybe it's even broken through the backing paper. You're going to start with a nice, clean cutout hole. So you want something like this, which is a drywall saw. So you're going to want to actually cut out and make a nice square that you can patch and replace that with new drywall. Because if you just kind of try to, goop in a whole bunch of mud to that spot, it's not going to set, it's never going to be strong, and it's always going to be visible. So those are kind of the important things to kind of start out with. So if you've got a hole that you want to patch, real quick thing with that Drydex, use something. This is a very quick, easy, cheap little tool to buy. It's called a drywall knife or putty knife. You can get them in metal, but unless you're actually doing a lot of kind of drywall work, these are really handy, really cheap to have. You scoop out a little bit of that Drydex and you push it into the hole, and then you kind of scrape it off flat. It's kind of like the less is more theory when it comes to drywall mud. You want to save yourself a whole lot of sanding at the end. So do it in layers and stages. So you apply it, then kind of scrape it off flat so that divot is filled. The backside of these, you'll notice, are rounded. So a really good tip, if you've got something that's pulled out of the drywall, and you've got that paper that kind of sticks out, it's really good to kind of get this end in it and make it concave. So push it in a little bit, so you've created that little bit of a divot. So when you apply that Drydex and squeeze it in, it fills the hole and you don't have that paper kind of sticking out.
So we were talking a little bit on the last episode we did. I remember, as a kid, my dad doing, drywall patching at home, and he would actually let me help with some of that, so if it was simple enough. Is this something that, if you're at home with your kids right now, is this something you can get your kids involved in safely, just to teach them, tricks and trades at an early age too?
Yeah, absolutely, because likely they're the cause of these dings and dents already, so might as well get them patching it and repairing it, right? So sometimes it's good. It's be like, you know what, you ding that wall, you're going to have to repair it. So at least give them the knowledge to know how to do it. So absolutely, it's something you can do. There's not a lot of chemicals, that kind of thing involved when it comes to drywall, or dangerous tools. It's very simple, a plastic putty knife. The most dangerous thing, something like a drywall saw. So leave that to mom or dad to kind of cut the hole out. But once you've got that new piece of drywall in there, what you want to do is, prior to installing that cutout piece, is install some backing. So backing is something that is screwed in behind it, like a piece of wood that covers the hole. So when you put that new piece of drywall in, you can screw it in and it's held secure. So that's going to really help. So when you've got that new little piece cut out, don't just fill the gaps with putty. You're going to want to get, and this is where the kids can get involved, you can get fiber tape. Fiber tape's really good. It looks like a hatch pattern, comes in a big roll, and it actually has an adhesive side to it, so you can stick it on over top of the joints. And once you've got your adhesive tape covering that joint, then you can apply the mud or the putty to it over top of that. So yeah, it's lots of things that the kids can get involved with.
What happens now? What happens? Say, if your kids, hypothetically speaking, what if that same area you just patched up, oops, just happens to get hit again?
Mm-hmm.
Can you continue to patch over, or at what point do you need to maybe do something different to completely fix it?
Well, there is a certain limit to it. Say you've got in an area called 8-foot area that maybe the kids have been playing hockey in the basement and it's created so many holes. What's really good in that situation is just to start new. So go give yourself a bigger cutout. Maybe it's a 4x4 square. Maybe it's a 4x8, which is a standard sheet of drywall. It shouldn't be daunting in the sense that you shouldn't be worried that you can't take a bigger portion out, because drywall is really great to be able to patch. So the same theory applies. So if you've got a nice clean cutout, go a little bit bigger than you have to. Don't just try to minimize, go right to the very edge. Give yourself a bigger piece to work with. So when you put that new piece in, it covers a bigger area, then it's less visual. It draws your eye to it less. So same theory applies. Apply tape to that perimeter around covering the two joints. In this case, if you've got a bigger drywall repair, you're likely going to want to use an actual drywall mud. So you're going to want to use something that's got a little bit more of a compound. The putty, the little Drydex compound, is great for patching small holes, but when you get into covering drywall tape, you're going to want a nice drywall mud. So you can get an all-purpose mud from any kind of hardware store, box store. Water it down a little bit. This is really important. So when you get an all-purpose drywall compound, it does seem like it's pliable, but it's meant to have water added to it. So you want to mix it up so it's a lot easier to work with. So when you go to cover it, it's not like you're pressing on concrete or glue. You want to mix it up with water. It's essentially, made up of mostly water anyway. So make it easier on yourself. Thin it out a little bit. Spread it out. Remember, less is more. Cover the tape and do it in several coats. Don't try to get it all covered in one and then sand the heck out of it after. It's going to just kill you. So you start with something small, maybe get yourself a metal knife. So once you've got your tape coat down, cover it just lightly scrape off all the lumps that's going to potentially dry and make it harder. So make your nice first tape coat. I suggest 3 coats if you're going to be doing a full sheet of drywall, let's say. Or if you happen to be finishing your basement, do 3 coats. So you've got your tape coat, you've got a covering coat, and then you got a final coat as sort of a minimum. And don't sand until your final coat. Don't sand in between. So cover it, and you can gradually work your way up to a bigger size knife. So this is a 12-inch knife for kind of that final coat. So you can feather out those joints over a bigger area. Thinly feather them out so you don't have these high ridges and really visible spots. And then at the final stage, you hit it with the sander or sanding sponge or pole sand or whatever the case may be. But from small patches to big patches, a sanding sponge is a really great tool. But wait till you're done your final coat. Wait till you've done a number of coats dried before you sand out, because that's going to be, the most important thing.
Okay. Well, hopefully parents at home right now won't have to do too much of this with their kids at home, but good tips just in case they do. Thank you again, Paul McGavigan. Thanks everyone for joining us. We will definitely keep some of these tips and tricks coming that can help you at home. So definitely stay tuned and we'll see you next time. Bye.